and grind it right down to a powder. Now, I've had a lot of people who are into raw foods ask me, well, couldn't I just eat it like this as a powder? And yeah, you can. You can mechanically eat it this way. You're not going to extract very much out of it. And that's because a lot of the cell walls are still intact and it's difficult to extract the nutrition out of it or the medicines out of it. However, you can mechanically eat it in the sense that it will move through your digestive tract. It won't make you sick, for sure. But really, science shows us that the best effects with chaga is medicinally come from a 2-hour decoction, a 2-hour boiling. Once it's been ground down like that, it's a lot like coffee grinds. It looks like coffee grinds. And it's very easy to extract. So we can drop that in our water, boil that for a couple hours, and what we'll be left with is the moistened bits that are like a coffee grind. Now that's got some uses to it. Once you're done making your extraction, you could gather up those coffee grinds and set them aside to dry somewhere. They can be used, because now they've been heat treated, they can be used as a wound dressing. So if anybody ever has a surface infection, they've damaged the surface of their skin in some way and it's infected, you can pack that material in there, these grounds, after they've been boiled, what's left over from your tea, and wrap that up like a poultice. And that'll actually help to take infection out of a wound. And I've personally tried that. I know it works. I've seen it done. So that's an interesting thing you can do with it. Now keep in mind, everything we've talked about so far is referring to chaga that's been dried. So, you know, this piece here, good example, I put this in a dehydrator for about 24 hours. And that's how I dried it. Because chaga seems to be susceptible to, and from what I've noticed, one type of mold. You know, it's particularly antimicrobial. However, there has got to be an organism that breaks it down, or else it would all be up to our necks and chaga out there from all the chagas that never broke down. So, of course, there's got to be something. And there's sort of a whitish-green mold that will form on the mycelia if you leave a wet chaga lying around your house for a couple days. So, best thing to do with it is to dry it. Now, what I like to do is either put it in a dehydrator, or if you don't have one, go ahead and put it on the oven rack or on a pan in the oven, and then keep that door cracked just a bit and put the oven to its lowest setting. And in about a day, you'll have a nice dry chaga, and you'll know the weight will go away and it'll be nice and light. So when it's like that, that's the easiest time to work with it. Like I said, you can use whole pieces in your teapot, you can use chunks, or you can break those chunks down further in a mortar and pestle or in a blender into a powder. And all of those will work fantastically well for your extraction. Once your water's heated up, this water's starting to heat up now, you can take your chaga in whatever form you're going to use it, and just add it right to your water. Remember, chaga's got vanillic acid in it, and that's what gives it such an amazing flavor as an herb. So we'll let that boil for 2 hours, and then we'll come back to it and extract the tea so you can see that. 2 hours is the recommended boiling time. Now you'll get a nice tea after about a half an hour. But going that little extra bit gives you more medicine, gives you more bang for your buck. You're going to appreciate the tea more. Chaga is one of those ones that you can make in a large batch because the liquid doesn't really go bad. So once it's boiled 2 hours and we pour it off, you know, we could leave it in this teapot, you know, sitting for days at a time at room temperature and it won't ferment. It takes a while for chaga tea to ferment. Or you could put it in the refrigerator, it'll last even longer. So you could, even though it's a 2-hour extraction period, you can make big batches of it and leave them sitting around, no problem, because it's not going to go bad. You can use it for days and days and days. So you only end up having to make it, say, once a week. So that's a great thing about it. So we'll come back in a minute and I'll show you the finished tea. So this chaga has been boiling for 2 hours. Now we call that a decoction. That's an important distinction to make. When you're extracting something with water, we have what's called an infusion, where we heat water up and then we pour the water onto the herb. And that would be like what we do with tea bags. When you make a tea, like a commercially prepared tea, you sort of put your tea bag in there and then you pour hot water on it, steep it. And that's called an infusion. A decoction is where something needs a little bit more aggressive of a heat. And we'll do that with a boiling process like this. So this chaga has been in this water, it's been boiling for a couple hours now. And we're going to pull a little of it out so you can see what that looks like. Now, chaga will decoct down into a liquid almost like the color of maple syrup. So you can see that there. This is a glass ladle. It's the kind of thing that you can find if you go to an antique shop. And this is a nice find, you know. For a long time I was looking for an alternative to metal ladles, and so finally found this one. Take a strainer. Now that's a great strainer there because it's got that concavity to it, which allows us to set it into a jar. And I'm just going to pour this through here, filter out those grinds. And that'll allow you to see the color. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'll allow you to see the color of this. So we got a nice dark liquid coming out of there. Now that's the basic recipe for decocting chaga. That would be the most basic way to make a medicinal preparation out of this. Now we could let that cool and drink it as is. Or we can take this further. And so on the chaga course we're going to discuss a few recipes that you can do to take this a lot further. But that's where you're going to want to start. That's your base liquid. Now remember that that tea, or that decoction, at room temperature will last a few days, and in your fridge will last even longer. So you can make one big batch and just keep using it each day, little bit by little bit, until it runs out and you can make a new batch for yourself. So basic is, you want to put that into nice spring water, boil it 2 hours, and when it's done, you could basically, if we had a big bowl here, we could pour this directly through, maybe even through a larger strainer, like this one here. Put that into a big bowl, pour that whole thing through, and remember those grinds, we can either throw those out or compost them, or we can save them and use them topically later, or even try to reboil them a second time. But the decoction, making a decoction is your basic preparation method for working with chaga, and that's what's going to carry you through into the more advanced levels of your chaga alchemy.